a virtual lecture series for this year. Very excited to have had 3 amazing speakers so far, and we're extra excited for our 4th and final speaker, ending it on a high note with Janie Cooper Wilson. So just a couple housekeeping notes before we get going. Just to ask everyone to try to keep yourselves on mute if you can, just so we kind of keep the background noise to a minimum, keep the distraction to a minimum. And there will be an opportunity at the end of the lecture for some questions if you would like. You have a couple of options. So you can, if you see at the top of your screen, you should see a little chat bubble icon. So you can use that to send a message, like a written message, if you want to ask a question that way. And then a couple pictures over from the speech bubble, there's a hand icon, and you can use that to raise your hand virtually, and then I can call on you to take yourself off mute and ask your question in person to Janie if you would like. But we'll just save all that to the end if we can. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speaker. So Janie, I've had the pleasure and the privilege of knowing for a few years now, and you know, been very honored she can share some of her knowledge and her time with me. She's probably one of the busiest ladies that I know, and one of the first people who kind of comes to mind when I think about anything to do with Black history in this area. Like Janie is, you know, she's been a very staunch and tireless advocate for the history of communities all across Ontario that are kind of at risk of being forgotten, right? That's kind of like her mission, right? So we're very excited to have her share some of her story, some of the many things that she's accomplished and the projects that she's worked on and is still working on today. So without further ado, I will turn it over to you, Janie.
Thank you so much, John. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Before I begin my presentation, I'd like to extend my thanks to my young friend, John Merritt. Great kid. I call him a kid because I'm an old lady. I've watched him come along, and he's doing an amazing job, and I have fond hopes that we'll be working together even closer in the future. I'd also like to thank the other staff, you know, at the museum for the invitation to participate in their 2023 Black History Month Virtual Speakers Series. It's my sincere hope that listeners will utilize my experiences as an incentive to greater insight into the lives of our Ontario's early African Canadians, the historical perceptions of their value as citizens, to learn more about how the final resting places of these pioneers are being dealt with in today's society, and to learn more about the role that the African Canadian and other people of African descent have played in the development of the collective history of our province. As many of you may know, the OHS is a bipartisan, not-for-profit corporation. It's a registered charity, it's a publisher, and it brings together people of all ages, all walks of life, all religions and cultural backgrounds who are interested in preserving some aspect of Ontario's bountiful history. As the OHS enters 135 years of service to our province, our organization continues to experience unprecedented growth, membership diversification, and expansion of our management system and programs in order to better serve Ontario's heritage sector. I am tremendously honored to be a sitting member of the Ontario Historical Society's Board of Directors and co-chair of the OHS Cemetery Preservation and Defense Committee. It has been a huge learning experience for me, and it's just been so much fun to work with all these talented and knowledgeable people. They're now good friends. The honor that they gave me by inviting me to sit on the board is especially dear to my heart because I am the first woman of color and only the second African Canadian to be provided with this great opportunity to serve my province, my country, my people since the OHS was first established in 1888. I would be remiss if I failed to thank Mr. Rob Leverty, uh, the OHS Executive Director Emeritus, for his counsel and his friendship as he retires after 34 years of outstanding service. And I pledge my full support, and I encourage you to pledge your support to our new Executive Director, Mr. Daniel Deshaw, as he embraces the enormous challenge ahead of him as he moves forward in the public interest. He has very big shoes to fill, but he's been mentored by Mr. Leverty for the past 8 years. We have every confidence in his abilities. Having boots on the ground and actively working on the front line of genealogy and research and historical and cemetery preservation work has convinced me that Canadians need to engage in some very difficult conversations to reevaluate this country's true multicultural historical origins. Acceptance of the truth about how propaganda surrounding the events of the past have negatively influenced the perceptions of our nation's people of different cultural origins is a must. The myths and untruths must be challenged and debunked to prevent negative cultural and social issues from being perpetuated. Historical leaders must first educate themselves, for they set the example for others. Make sure, if you are a leader, that you set a positive example. If you don't know, ask, and don't feel any less for asking. If you stop learning, you're done. Our leaders must be approachable and prepared to truthfully educate the public at every opportunity if any significant social change is ever to take place. There are no half measures. The truth of our nation's history must encompass all perspectives. Otherwise, we as Canadians are living in a disconnected, incomplete fool's paradise. It is my specific duty as an OHS field representative to complete thorough site investigations, to research crucial archival information and documentation pertaining to the individuals who are interred in these cemeteries, and to assist in bringing many of these at-risk, inactive, unregistered burial grounds and cemeteries into compliance with the provincial law. It is also my duty to counsel descendants, municipal officials, personnel, public organizations, and other concerned parties regarding the appropriate procedures that must be followed, and to help them navigate the complex challenges and legal ramifications that are involved. This is time consuming, and yet it's very fascinating work. This part of my job is the most challenging, especially in cases where the poor and or marginalized individuals are involved. And I must say this, I am I often wonder how some developers and some people in the position of authority can sleep at night on their pillows of lies and ill-gotten gain. But every once in a while, I'm pleasantly surprised by municipalities and private owners who take great pride in the history of their communities and are prepared to do everything within their power to work with descendants and volunteer organizations to ensure their local history sites are preserved with dignity and respect. As a historical advocate, knowing the law and conducting oneself with integrity within the law is imperative. Also, understanding how the English language can be oftentimes confusing to newcomers because it can and is frequently manipulated, as well as possessing the ability, we also need to possess the ability to see beyond the obvious. That is equally significant. The majority of over 1,500 abandoned and grossly neglected cemeteries in the province of Ontario are located on former church properties that have either been abandoned or sold for private residence, or they can be located on privately owned agricultural farmland in out-of-the-way rural areas. However, you're probably not aware that those unregistered, inactive burial sites unfortunately are not afforded the same protection under the law as active cemeteries are. Unfortunately, these at-risk cemeteries are all pigeonholed under the same blanket category under the Funeral, Burial, and Cremation Services Act. Yet each site poses uniquely different features and issues that must be addressed individually. Each site is a mini archive that contains fascinating and informative leads about the province's early beginnings that you may not find anywhere else. People make history. Dead people make history. Unfortunately, many of those who made the history of this province have slipped into obscurity generations ago without any form of acknowledgement, dignity, or respect to mark their contributions to this world that we live in. Their final and forgotten resting places have been located in some appalling conditions, and I've seen this with my own eyes. They've been found under piles of accumulated household garbage, under debris of all sorts, just choked with weeds, fallen trees, under plow furrows, in swamps, rendering them out of sight and out of mind. Tombstones have been broken up with sledgehammers and summarily dumped in landfills. Cattle and other livestock have been allowed to roam freely and at will through these sites. Backhoes and bulldozers have dug up the remains of our dead so the ground could be leveled for housing development, in the hope that all memory of the existence of these incredibly courageous people even lived at all, in the hope that they'll disappear forever. And this is happening today in real time. This may be a shock to you, but desecration like this does happen more often than you might even imagine or want to believe. Over the years, Land developers and officials across the province have become well acquainted with ways and means to deliberately sidetrack descendants and community interest groups when the issue of maintenance of old buildings and cemeteries come to their attention. Factors such as sacredness, compassion, and humanity don't seem to matter anymore. Not when there's money to be made and there's no care or feeling of moral obligation toward the historical site or respect for any of the descendants. So therefore, no serious consideration of preservation is available. It's completely absent during the decision-making processes. A good many historical projects can be stalled indefinitely due to a lack of factual information and far too much misinformation. Canada is a nation of immigrants, built by immigrants. As Canadians, we must give more than just simple lip service to the concept of diversity, inclusivity, and equality. I wear my feathers today because I am also a musty woman of mixed blood, Black and Indigenous. And there's a little bit of Caucasian thrown in there too. I didn't forget you, Grandpa. We as Canadians must, must forget about paying lip service. Please be serious about this. We must right the wrongs perpetuated against Canada's original inhabitants, our Indigenous people, who welcomed Europeans with open arms as guests in their home, Turtle Island. However, they were repeatedly betrayed, oppressed, humiliated, disrespected, and ostracized in return for their generosity. Those of us who are descended from first generation African Canadian settlers, many of whom intermarried with the Indigenous, as my ancestors did, and fought as allies beside our Indigenous brothers and sisters in the defense of our country. We count our mixed Black and Indigenous blood as an honor, a badge of honor, and a blessing. Our respective cultures hold many traditional similarities beyond the obvious non-white skin. And we have suffered similar betrayals, oppression, stereotyping, degradation, and disrespect. Therefore, we continue to stand in solidarity with our Indigenous brothers and sisters as the struggle continues to bring about the necessary change. The scars of the past will never disappear because the perpetrators of the crimes committed against our Indigenous and Black ancestors will never be brought to justice. They can't be because they're dead, long gone. And so are the ancestors that suffered the most. However, those who continue to perpetrate the crimes in modern society must be held accountable to the full extent of the law. Canada is a democracy, and in a democracy, no one should be above the law, regardless of their financial, political, or social, or cultural standing. Let us take a moment to explore the meaning of a few words: country, citizenship, justice, and history. Let's consider the meaning of a country. A country is defined as an area of land inhabited by people of a nation, a land of one's birth or citizenship. Citizenship is defined as being a member of a province or a country who owes allegiance to it by birth or naturalization and is entitled to the full citizen rights. Justice is defined as fairness and rightfulness, the use of authority to administer and uphold the law fairly and justly, rewarding or penalizing as deserved. Now let us explore the meaning of history. History is defined as a branch of knowledge that deals consistently with the past. It is an account of what has happened in the life of a people or a country. History is also defined as the known or recorded past. History is not defined as the branch of knowledge that deals inconsistently with the past, nor is it defined as an account of what has happened in the lives of only certain people residing in a country. Most of all, history is not defined as only the known or recorded past of a certain people or country. Let that sink in. Fear of the unknown, more frequently than not, is the root of adamant and sustained resistance on the part of some citizens, private owners, municipalities, funding sponsors, while the biggest hurdle to cross with descendants is trust. It's necessary to prepare surviving descendants and concerned individuals for the long haul research, planning, and negotiations with no guarantee of immediate success. Often the parameters of a given social situation or historical site indicates proceeding with extreme caution, as some sites, such as deteriorated and or desecrated underground railroad sites, have the potential of a powder keg with a very, very short fuse. As a woman of color, I understand the anger, the disappointment, and the helplessness that descendants feel in these situations. I understand it because I've lived it. I've experienced all of those feelings firsthand. Anger is understandable, but I know a hot head only achieves more trouble and a whole lot of wasted effort. Turn the anger using common sense and intelligence to motivate yourself into affirmative action. Disappointments will happen. That's just the facts of life. Eventually, the sun will shine again, as surely as night will turn to day. Helplessness, as far as I'm concerned, is just an excuse to do absolutely nothing. And those of you who know me, you know I didn't want to say it just like that. That's a joke, inside joke. While blaming everybody else and their dog for what has happened. Make stone soup. Where there's a will, there's a way. It is always my desire to resolve these complex issues as amicably as possible. Realistically, I have learned a project may not always turn out to be all that it is hoped for. We stand on the shoulders of our ancestors, and we owe it and our very existence to them. They survived much greater adversity by taking one little step at a time. We need to pay close attention to their guidance. Learning from the past is vastly different than living in the past. My policy, as those who have worked with me know and know very well, is to meet each case and each individual with the courage of my convictions, common sense, integrity, respect. And I always come fully prepared with documented facts, a good deal of patience, and a view towards win-win in all concerned for all concerned parties. Being observant of, I hit something here, just one moment. Being observant of body language and a person's attitude always provides a clear indication of what can be expected. It isn't hard to spot those who feel they have better things to do than waste precious time and effort on an old cemetery or a building that no one cares about. A person of this mindset views the public concern and the required process as completely unwarranted. It's abundantly obvious that this person, if they happen to be on a municipal payroll, will conveniently disregard the fact that they're being paid, and paid very well, I might add, with taxpayers' dollars, your taxpayer dollars and mine, to do a job as a public servant. Few won't like that. Do I look like I care? Recently, I was absolutely appalled by the lack of transparency and the lengths a particular municipality in another area of the province would go to avoid accountability in regard to an inactive cemetery within their jurisdiction. They had evidently and conveniently avoided compliance with the law for many, many years. The staff simply couldn't be bothered doing the necessary paperwork that was involved, and council was taken completely off guard, never dreaming that they'd be caught in the act of trying to slip the whole distasteful subject under the rug in favor of a quick fix. They wanted to get rid of it, out of sight, out of mind. I have been working for the last 4 years in another municipality in southern Ontario, where I presently have 4 active and 2 pending Underground Railroad sites under OHS and Bereavement Authority investigation. Plus, there are a minimum of 10 to 12 additional case files for other neglected and or unregistered burial grounds and cemeteries that may not be associated with the Underground Railroad and freedom seekers. These cemeteries are awaiting investigation and the research that must come first. In this particular case, the municipality and private owners have been playing the game of catch me if you can. That old game has been played for over 40 years. Enough already. Never before have they met with such tenacity. And they're running out of wiggle room. They never met up with somebody like me. I don't quit. Prior to my involvement as the OHS representative assigned to this case file, this municipality has been able to force uninformed descendants and concerned citizens to give up the struggle by throwing empty promises and roadblocks and outright lies in their way until they just became tired of it. Near the opposite end of the spectrum sits the Oro African Episcopal Church National Historic Site, located in Oro-Medonte Township at the intersection of Old Barry Road and Line 3. Just last weekend, the doors of this historic church structure was open to visitors for a day in celebration of Black History Month. Some of you may have seen the film clip on CTV Barrie News. I was pleased to welcome the Honorable Doug Shipley, MP for Barrie, Springwater, Oro-Medonte, His Worship Mayor Randy Greenlaw of Oro-Medonte, and several members of his esteemed council. They made an amazing surprise visit. I was just tickled pink to the site. These special guests spent several hours speaking with walk-in visitors and in conversation with myself and Mr. Doug Minter, representing the recently incorporated not-for-profit Oral Freedom Institute, and Senior Project Manager for the Canadian Black Chamber of Commerce. My thanks again goes out to Mr. John Merritt of the Simcoe County Museum for his kind assistance as co-host. Many of you who stopped by at this the BME Church for Black History Month were present at or were aware of the grand reopening celebration held in August of 2016. After the extensive $200,000 four-year restoration project of the church. Naturally, a tremendous learning curve came afterward, and it became a matter of hurry up and wait until people had successfully navigated that. Then, regretfully, COVID-19 pandemic curtailed all forward movement. Since May 2022, I have been in consultation with Mr. Minter and Mr. Sean Binns of Oro-Medonte's Director of Operations and Community Services regarding how to maintain this historic site and to develop it to its fullest capacity as an educational tool and tourist destination with a view to long-term sustainability. I'm 76 years old and I'm not going to be around forever. So if there's anybody up there or out there that wants to follow my lead, we need advocates. Although I've only heard positive comments, if our proposed goal is to materialize well thought out plans and having all key players on the same page are prerequisites to success. I anticipate participating in more in-depth consultations and negotiations that will bear a bountiful and diverse crop in the very near future. I fervently pray for the ongoing guidance and blessings of the Creator and the ancestors, and for the continued approval and support of the Township of Oro-Medonte and the County of Simcoe, the Province of Ontario, and our federal government, community partners, stakeholders, descendants, old and new Canadians, and lovers of freedom and history from around the world, regardless of religious or cultural background. The Oro African Methodist Episcopal Church was a symbol of freedom and unity for the ancestors, and it was a symbol of safety for those of bygone days, and it remains a beacon of learning and possesses all those same qualities that should be passed down to future generations. Your support will help to make that dream come true, one step at a time. Thank you. John?
Here I am. Thanks, Janie. That was great. It's good to hear a little bit about, all the things that you've been up to and what motivates you, and I'll hear a little bit about some of the many things that you still have on the go. So thank you. So we have some time now. Does anybody have any questions for Janie about anything she was talking about? I know there was some questions from last week about the Oro African Church as well. So if you want to use your the chat functions, that speech bubble icon on your screen, or if you want to raise your hand, so it's kind of next door to that, there's a raise your hand icon. You can raise your hand and I can call on you to take yourself off mute. But we have a few minutes to ask Janie any questions that you might have.
Could you relay those messages, if any?
Yes, I will, for sure.
Thanks.
In the meantime, I was wondering, I mean, well, first of all, because I know you a little bit, but I don't know everything about, I don't know everything there is to know about you, obviously, but like, how long would you say you've been doing this kind of work for? Like, when did this start for you?
Well, John, you know, I was doing work like this and being trained as a little girl, and I didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
I've always sought a way to be accepted, to be comfortable in my own skin, because I didn't belong to any one race. It took time to develop a plan. I've always tried to bring people together and work with young people. As far as work at the Oro Church, my cousin Carolyn and her family handled the stewardship for many, many years. And I never like to step on anyone's toes. But in 2013, when I saw it all in Tyvek, and I heard then Mayor Harry Hughes say that it was ready to fall on the ground, I called him and I got really involved with the church. My other work, I started working in Bethel Union Pioneer Cemetery, restoring it back in 1996, 97. And it's just boomeranged. But there's always been the love of history.
Yeah.
To understand why and how the world is the way it is today.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so there's a few questions coming in the chat now. So first one is from Becca. Becca's asking, how would you suggest an average citizen get involved in supporting these communities and ensuring history, specifically local Black history, is preserved?
Pick up your phone. Say, how can I help? Just follow guidance. You've got the best thing in the world right in front of you, a computer. You can find so much information there. Follow the leads, read between the lines. There's all kinds of leaders out there that are willing to help. I'm a busy lady, but I always try to answer every email and make, return phone calls as much as I can. And rest assured, if you call me and you leave a message, I will get back to you. So anyone wanting to contact me by telephone or email can go through John, and he will relay the message to me.
All right. Thanks, Janie. Thanks, Becca, for your question. So next one is from Ellen. So Ellen's just saying hi. And
hi, Ellen. How you doing, sweetheart?
And so her question is, she's just asking you to expand on the Oro Freedom Institute. So, what, just if you're able to share a little bit about its mandate, how it's organized, kind of what its goals are, anything like that.
Well, it's new. It was formed in 2022. 2022. The principals are with the Canadian Black Chamber of Commerce, but they're on a learning curve as well. Many are American, so they are trying to understand the relationship between the Canadian Black history and American Black history. That's where I come in, and to show how it connects to all the other areas and Black history sites in the province. What they would like to do is invest in the site and move towards an interpretation center that's fully functional, so that people can come in one spot and understand, and there'd be someone on staff that knows the history. There'd be history handouts available, and so on and so forth, tours, to bring this all together. It's the second stage, and it all has to be negotiated. But we're very, very hopeful, Ellen. I'll be calling on you, never fear.
All right. Thanks, Janie. That's exciting too. Just the thought that there could be something like that there one day. That would be nice to see. So thank you for your question, Alan. Oksana just had just a comment, just saying thank you. It's important to inform everyone about our history to make a better future and avoid past mistakes. And then that was just followed with a question also from Oksana. Could you please suggest the best website to be better informed? So I'm not sure if that's about like the Oro AME Church or just like local Black history in general, but maybe just some resources that come to mind.
Just a general search, punch in Black history in Ontario, and there's all kinds of links. And when you understand that, then try to look at what has happened in the US with the various states in relation to what's happening here in Canada and what happened here in Canada, the parallels. It'll gradually come together. It's very confusing, but gradually it will all come together.
Right. Okay. So Oksana's saying thank you. Ellen says thanks as well.
Thank you.
So any other questions for Janie before we let her go? Because as you can imagine, February's been a busy month, Janie? And it's almost over, but not quite. Right. You got a mad dash to the finish, to the end of the month, eh? So,
yeah, I might get a couple of days rest before I start again.
Yeah.
It's worth it, though.
Yeah. So Ellen's raising her hand, so I'm going to go ahead, Ellen, if you have a question for Janie or a comment.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Great. Okay. Hi, Janie.
Hi, Ellen. How are you, honey?
I am fine, thank you. I wanted to ask this question rather than type it out, and that is, at some point, perhaps at Bethel or maybe at another site, has someone come up to you to talk to you or to talk about, their ancestors or different things that made you think to yourself, yes, this is why I have done what I have done?
Sorry. Absolutely. It happens all the time. Sorry about that. I have COPD. All the time, Ellen. And if I'm able to connect, people that come just praying for help to find relatives, or if I can give them a piece of their history that was lost, that is the greatest joy. I've been there. I know what that feeling is like of having no history beyond, a few little bits and pieces, or any kind of understanding of how it all fits together. So that's the real reward, is seeing this happen, because those individuals will pass it on to their generations and future generations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope I answered that.
Yes, you did.
Good. I'm always available, Ellen, anytime you want to talk to me.
Thanks, Janie.
I'll stop in and see you next time I go down and visit John.
Sounds good.
Good.
Please do.
God bless, honey. Lost you, John.
John, you're muted.
Oh, thank you. That's embarrassing. I was just going to ask if anybody else had any questions for Jenny, any final questions before we let her go. All right. So seeing none, I'd just like to, yeah, thank you again, Janie, so much for taking the time to be here. It was really great to get to hear you talk. It's been a long time for me. And it's nice to kind of hear you share your story and kind of your motivations and what you've been up to and, you know, some of your many future plans. So, I really appreciate you being here. Thank you also to everybody in the audience today virtually. Thanks for joining us for this particular talk and for all of the other talks that we've had this month. Definitely stay tuned. Hopefully we can do this again next year or anytime really. That would be nice. And so in the meantime, take care everybody and hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, John.